happen with administration throughout the course of this school year. It's our hope that we will be able to engage the community, whether it's in those that may be watching this recording at a later time. We know that our community is actively engaged with lots of activities with their children. So we are recording this session this evening so that if you do miss the in-person forum, that you can watch it at your leisure. So the purpose of our first forum is to talk a little bit about our enrollment as a school district. And if you look at the first slide that is in your packet this evening, you will see that we engage a company called RSP that does our demographics and assesses what they believe our enrollment is going to be across time. Most recently, this past March, they did an update. And remember that the COVID world that happened to us back in 2020 really did some changes on a lot of communities across the United States. And Williston is no exception. So we wanted to make sure as a board and as an administration that we had the most accurate numbers that we could have based on their analysis. And you can see that number as of March 2024 was 5,289 projected students coming to us in the fall, this school year. So if you look at the chart at the right, as of August 23rd, 2024, you can see that our actual enrollment is 5,401. Now that number, I want to make sure you understand that typically in our school district, and this is a trend and a pattern over time, we do get increased enrollment up through the Labor Day holiday and even into that following week, because many of the individuals that relocate to our community come in that timeline. The other thing that's important to note about that 5,401 is we're not going to keep all 5,401 students in our school district throughout the course of the school year. We are a highly mobile community based on the workforce that works here, and all you have to do is look at the parking lots in our hotels Monday through Thursday, and then look at them on the weekend, and you will see that there are a lot of individuals that come into our community that leave our community and go elsewhere on the weekends. And that's true also of our population and our workforce, whether it be in the oil field or other industries that conduct business in Williston. They get transferred all the time, and it's not uncommon to see that number fluctuate by as much as 100 students throughout the course of the school year. The other thing I want just to draw your attention to from a fact standpoint is that in the state of North Dakota, we are funded based on our average daily membership and our per pupil number. That number is captured by the Department of Public Instruction on September 15th of every school year. So whatever our number is on September 15th, that's the budget, the amount that the Department of Public Instruction will fund the Williston Basin School District on. Then again, in the spring, they also do a snapshot and see what the difference may be, if any. So it's extremely important that we continue to work with our demographer to make sure that that number is accurate, because we don't want to overinflate our budget. We want to make sure that what we're presenting to our community is accurate. And we believe in the work that RSP has done for us, and they have been fairly accurate. So we anticipate that we will probably settle somewhere around 5,300 to 5,320 this school year. And that, if you look at the number on the far right, that 5,400 number, that is over 4% growth in our student enrollment. And that 4% growth is significant from one year to the next. And if you look at that chart that RSP has put together and you have Superman eyes, you can see that that number will continue to grow over time as we move into the next years, and the next years down the line. And so as a school district, we continue to plan for increased enrollment. So what have we done so far? One of the facts that I will share with you this evening is that we've spent a lot of time looking at our elementary school population. Not that our middle school population and our high school population aren't also important, but what we know right now is that we are utilizing every classroom in every elementary school across our district. We also know that there were some things that needed to happen to make sure that we were able to serve our elementary student population moving forward. And one of those changes that happened in the fall of last school year was a significant change for us as a school district. Missouri Ridge Elementary School, which it's now called, used to be a 3 through 8 school. And in order to look at our facility capacity and to relieve some of the overcapacity in our other elementary schools, a decision was made to transition to a K-5 enrollment structure. And there's good reason for that. And the reason behind that is there was some advance work that was done by our school board and administration leading up to some of these changes, and that work was our school-wide or district-wide feasibility study, which set some guiding principles as an organization in how we were going to structure our schools into the future. If you look at that school feasibility study, which is located on our website, and I think I've memorized it by now, on page 6, you will find the guiding principles that set the strategic direction of how decisions are made in our school district for the future. And one of those guiding recommendations for decisions was to have a K-5 structure at our elementary schools, a 6-8 structure at the middle level, and a 9 through 12 structure at the high school. And that's what we've done. So in the fall of 2023, we opened Missouri Ridge as a K-5 elementary school. We spent a lot of time talking about and engaging our public on how to set up the boundary for Missouri Ridge Elementary School. What we knew at the time is that Hagen, our largest school, had over 500 students, and it was just over capacity. So we engaged our community. We worked with RSP. We held multiple forums. We gathered electronic input from people who couldn't be here. And we took all of that information and we came up with the structure you see in the diagram that outlines the boundary for Missouri Ridge Elementary and how we capture students to attend that school. And I'm very pleased to say in May of 2023, our school board members approved this plan for that past fall, 23-24. Now we're not stopping there because there's been some additional work that's happened, and there was a a board decision that occurred last school year to go out for a referendum to build a new school. With overwhelming support from our community, we were able to get that passed at approximately 66 or 67% threshold, which is very exciting for us as a community because we haven't built an elementary school since 1984, and it's much needed. So we're moving into what we're going to call the boundary process phase number 2. And this is a process that's going to happen over the course of this fall and all the way into the spring, where we are going to engage our community once again in a much larger fashion, because the phase 2 boundaries will encompass all of our schools, and hopefully we can come to some consensus and recommendation as a community on what's best for the students in the Williston Basin School District number 7. Now, here's some things that I do know in talking with some other superintendents who are now retired. They do not, and these are superintendents that worked in the North Dakota system for 35, 40 years. They do not know of another community that is a Class A school district that does not have a boundary system for where students go to school. So this is a very, very important process that we're going to take very seriously. We're going to engage our community, and we're going to take parent input, and we're going to do our absolute best to listen. Now, when we take that recommendation to the board in the spring of 25, it won't be absolutely perfect for everyone. And hopefully, if enough people get involved, we will have a very robust, people will have been heard, validated, and their voice and opinions considered. So the plan is to spend the fall of 24 and the spring of 25 to do a comprehensive boundary study with public input, committee meetings, and then heard to vote in the late spring voice on the boundary plans for the fall implementation. So the plan is to spend the fall of 24 and the spring of 25 is for people to know where their children with boundary attendance areas are. Committee meetings, soon then heard, sooner than later. We don't want people waiting until the last minute in the summer for the fall. We want that process. So the plan is to spend to be done of 24 and to know before the school year. People to know where their children boundaries are, and hopefully committee meetings software now, sooner than later. We can implement. People waiting until this work in the school districts will have type your address in. The plan is to tells you be done. People to know before attendance of their school year. People to know where their children with boundary input. Hopefully, to be realistic. Software now, large sooner than later. Special implements. Waiting until this work in the school districts will have type your address in. Kids with tells you be moderate to severe disabilities. The programs are at different schools, but again, we will do our absolute best soon now to listen to our community. The next slide has to do with the comprehensive boundary process, and it really outlines, I think, a very well thought out process where there are multiple touch points for the community to be engaged, for us to listen to our parent community, for us to listen to our administrative, our teachers, our support staff about what their thoughts are on this process. So you can see that as you look at the arrows that go down on this slide, there are very well thought out touch points, I'll call them, for input to be received. Now, we live in a world that in person is not always the most convenient for people. So what we found very successful last time around is to send out electronic surveys so people had an opportunity to share their voice, and then we published those results and we shared those with the school board so the school board was informed about the larger community, because as you see this evening, the auditorium isn't full, but if we can reach out and capture maybe 2,000 or 3,000 voices electronically, that gives us much more robust information to share when we share out with our community. So these guiding principles that I talked about are listed on the next slide, and for your convenience, somebody with a lot more technology knowledge than me has put a QR code there that links our long-term facilities report. The guiding principles for class size and facilities, our ultimate goal is to make sure that we prepare and accommodate the current and future academic and ancillary program needs in our community. That at some point we have a plan to phase out our aged portable classrooms and replacing them with permanent structures. You see the configuration preferences on school size and grade. 4-section elementary schools, and you will be happy to know that our new elementary school, which is being built in the old airport area, is designed for 600 plus students. So what that means is it will be a 4-section school, which will have 4 kinder, 4 first, 4 second, 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. We have a preference for class size, and we strive to reach these class size averages across the district, and it's become very, very difficult with limited class size or limited class space. So at K2, our goal is 20, and grades 3 through 12, 25. Now, does that mean that every classroom in the school district is going to reach those targets? Absolutely not. But that's what we're striving for. And research demonstrates that children that are educated in kinder, 1st, and 2nd grade in smaller class sizes tend to have better academic success down the road. We were very proud of the fact that during the 23-24 school year, we limited our kinder and 1st grade classes to a cap of 22. This year we didn't reach that. We had to up those caps because of lack of space and additional enrollment. Boundary setting, as I've spoken about, we want to make sure that we have quality and equitable education across our school district. So the education that a student receives at McVeigh is the same education, equitable education, that they would receive at Missouri Ridge Elementary School or Lewis and Clark or Rickard, or you name the school. We also, last school year, in our wonderful school district, were able to implement K-8 transportation. And that transportation has been expanded, and we are now sending, I believe it's 3 buses to the high school. So we're transporting high school students. And one of the reasons for that is when you looked at our data, our past data, we had and continue to have an attendance problem in our school district. And one of the remedies for that is to make sure that students have a way to get to school, especially in today's world, where you have 2-parent working families, and sometimes because of the jobs that they have to leave before school starts. And having a way to get kids to school is a way to address that attendance challenge that we have in our community. As we respond to growth, one of the important things that we need to continue to focus on is the data and what the data shows us. And that's why we engage our consultant, RSP, and we work with them on a yearly basis to update that data, because one of the worst things you can do in a community is not stay true to the data. And let's just say that for some reason we have a downturn in enrollment. Well, we don't want to build a brand new school and ask the taxpayers to build a brand new school of 600 students if the data doesn't demonstrate the need. So we want to make sure that we are making good decisions based on the data, and that we are good stewards of our taxpayer dollars, so that we can gain that trust with them. I guarantee you the trust that our taxpayers showed us with the vote for the bond for the new elementary school. When our new elementary school opens, it will be full. We need the space right now desperately, but it will allow us to provide more robust educational experiences across the district, and maybe balance our class sizes to those guiding principles the board has established for the future. The next slide talks about our strategic plan webpage, and you can see the QR code there. Our school district operates on a strategic plan that's built on 4 pillars: academic engagement, innovation, school culture, and resource management. So all of those things encompass the vision of our school district. This strategic plan was adopted in the fall of 2022, and I think this graphic shows the 4 pillars, which are the columns, and then we have 17 strategic priorities that are listed underneath each one of those: academic engagement, innovation, culture, and resource management. So that's the direction. That's kind of like the roadmap for the future. And we are currently in the process of having conversations with our board regarding refreshing that strategic plan to make sure that some of the things that have become what we would call foundational practices may not need to have specific goals attached to them, but there may be other things that we come up with that we need to shift as the changing world happens around us, to make sure that our students are competitive with not only students in North Dakota, across the United States, and in the world. As part of this forum, we asked the community if they had any questions, and there were some questions submitted, and I want to take some time to address those questions, and I'm going to have Mrs. Langford, our public relations person, read the questions as they were presented to us, so that I can do my absolute best to try to clarify and have an answer for those questions.
And you can switch back to the slide maybe. They're going back and forth for the recording. If a student is going to 4th grade and spent their entire life at the school they are at, will there be a grandfather process so that they can finish at the school they are currently enrolled with the peers they were with, or will they be forced out to a different school?
Our goal is to look at our 4th graders that have spent their kinder, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade in that school. And what I've learned from experience is there needs to be some sort of grandfather type of approach, because, you know, a 4th grader probably deserves to finich their elementary experience before they go on to fifth grade. So keep in mind that when we do make this transition, that every school will be K-5 and not K-4, and Missouri Ridge is K-5. So that process is going to need to have a lot of conversation with our parent community, because there may be some parents who have an opinion that they want their child to transition to the different school. And that may be a family concern, because maybe that new school or that school that they would transition to would be more convenient, and let's just say they're within walking distance and they can walk across the street or down the road to that new environment. So these are all the things that we're going to need to consider as a community, and take that input, and ultimately when we make that recommendation to the board, we want to do what's best for children. So I don't want to make an absolute and say, yes, it's going to be this way or this way, because ultimately parents may have different opinions on that issue, and we need to do the listening process first.
There's a question that I'll read, but I believe it's answered in a previous slide. When will the boundary meetings happen? And so that is identified in the slide, kind of the colorful one going down. And then as a follow-up to that, how do I become part of the boundary committee as a parent?
Okay, the first thing that I would suggest is if you want to be a part of the boundary committee process, I would encourage you to come to those forums, to reach out to our Director of Public Relations and submit your name as an interested parent, and we will go through a vetting process and make sure that we have representation that is from across the community. We haven't really finalized that part of the process yet, but we will do that in the near future, certainly before our first meeting, so that parents are aware of how they can get involved. There are a lot of different ways for parent involvement. It's not always showing up at the actual committee meeting. There are a number of ways that you can be involved, providing written input and those types of things, but we do want parent involvement. It's going to be critical that we have a community that is engaged in this process, especially since we don't currently have a boundary process. Most school districts, when they start talking about, most Class A districts, when they start talking about boundary, they are talking about boundary changes, that a process is already in place, and they build a new school and they have to reconfigure the boundaries to balance out the schools. That's not the case in Williston. We're starting from scratch, so we have an opportunity to do it right the first time, right? But we can only do that with parent involvement and listening to the voices of our community. Now, will everybody be absolutely happy with the end result? Probably not. But one thing I've learned is that listening, engaging, hearing, respecting, and then making a decision, it comes out a lot better when people are heard than when we don't hear them. So that opportunity is going to be available throughout the course of this entire school year. And we'll have different touch points, as I call them, for parents to express their opinions.
The next question, will the boundary set for Missouri Ridge change, or is there a possibility for change, or is it a set in stone and upcoming meetings are for all other school boundaries, only excluding Missouri Ridge?
I think in order to be fair to the process, the proximity of the new school to Hagen I think we're going to have to take a look at what's best for the entire community, and that includes the parents that live around the Hagen area, which are quite a few, because if you look at our cluster maps, most of the volume of where people live in our community are in that radius, within a 2-mile radius of that particular school. So I think we need to look at all options, not just limit ourselves to, okay, let's exclude this area and make the boundaries based on these areas. I think we need to have multiple options presented so that people can take a look and say, well, I like plan A, I like plan B, or I like plan C. And then we put it out to the community and let the community provide us that direction. And then we take the voice of what we hear and we take it as a recommendation to our board, and we can show them data based on how people voted, so to say, for the plan.
With regard to pre-K, we have 2 questions, very related. We'll start with the first one. Will pre-K be added to the schools after the new school is built, or will they attend in one location? For example, this year it's at Bakken or Lewis and Clark, and then transition to a different school for kindergarten.
Okay. With the new elementary school, we do have preschool space, both special ed and general ed preschool space built into the new school. It's never been the plan to keep our preschools here at the Bakken Center. It's just because this is where the space exists, that's why they're here. We have 2 general preschools here at the Bakken Center, and we have one at Lewis and Clark, 2 at Lewis and Clark Elementary School. Now, the plan and the vision that I would have, and this is my vision, it's not been vetted with the board. I think that as we grow and as we open our new school, as we transition, it would be nice to have our at least one preschool classroom in every elementary school in the future. But that's going to take time to add on. So what would that mean? That would mean that based on that model, we may have a neighborhood school, preschool to kindergarten to first grade model. But until we can have that adequate space, there may be other alternatives where we look at turning a building into a pre-K center for a short period of time until we have that space to transition out. But one of the things we do know in education by the research is children who come to kindergarten with readiness skills to learn stay on grade level. That's what the research says, and that they're reading by the 3rd grade. And if you're reading by the 3rd grade and you're good at it, the chances of success further in life are exponential.
And the final question that I have here, I'll double check to see if any have come in during the presentation, piggybacks off that. Will the kids in pre-K, assuming now, be allowed to continue at the school they are at? In this case, Lewis and Clark, the person who's submitting this.
That decision hasn't been made, but certainly that's something that we would like to consider. You know, kids start in an environment and they begin to get comfortable in that environment. They get to know the layout of the school, but it's not something that we can guarantee at this point because we don't know the answer yet. We need to let our community speak once again and hear their voice.
Okay. Raise your hand if you're here and you submitted a question during this. Okay, great. I don't see any others. I'm going to go back to our PowerPoint. Final slide.
Anyone in the audience this evening that has a question that they thought of during the presentation that they'd like to ask, or any feedback that they'd like to suggest that we consider in the future as we navigate down this journey of engaging our community?
First, I just want to say thank you because I know this has been a huge process, and I know it's been a lot on you guys. You were talking about the fourth graders, so if we do have a new school and you grandfather them in, where does it stop? What about a third grader that's been there since kindergarten? Like, is it just fourth grade? I mean, obviously that's a decision to come later, but that was my first thought was, where do you
Yeah.
stop it?
So I think that's why we need to work through the process. So I'll throw a couple more at you because I've been through this before. What about sibling pairs? What about what about this? What about that? But sibling pairs come up. Well, I got a fourth grader and I'm going to have a kindergartner. Does that mean my kids have to go to two different schools? Well, I think I don't want to answer that as an administration. I want to hear what the community has to say about those processes and look at how other places have handled those particular nuances, so to say, so that we don't do something that is not good for families and it's not good for children. That's my focus. My focus is I want whatever we do to be child-centered. I want whatever we do to listen to the voice of our parent community because that's who we serve.
And I guess, and picking off of that too, while they don't have to go to two different schools, you have a kindergartner if they're here, so you can switch your other kids.
Yeah.
But, and I guess at that point, I feel that's kind of why we've gotten to where we are. Because, and I'll use myself as a prime example, when I bought my home, I was in understanding I'd be at Rickard, and we got put in McVeigh. So I drive past Rickard to go to McVeigh, and then I have friends who drive past McVeigh to go to Rickard.
Yeah, and that's a real issue in our community. And again, it's no fault of anyone. It's some of the things that have happened in the past. Some of the things that my team has shared with me, they've been here longer, is that we had these booms and people came in high numbers and we had to add portables and it really was and became a space issue. Where was the open classroom space at when the kid registered? And if one school was full or two schools were full, they had to drive by those two schools to get to that classroom that had space. And hopefully what the boundary process will do is put some finality on that so there's a clear understanding based on where I live as to where I go to school.
And I like that, and I appreciate that. So, and not that, I mean, I love that I'm in McVeigh now, so it's been great. But the second question I have is you talked about like the clustering, and that's how you based on the location and that, which I think is right. But with that question, and I've had a couple people talk to me about it, is that based off of? I mean, yes, the majority of the people are there, but is that based off of apartment living or homes?
Both. It's based off of both, but obviously there are a lot more apartments in that general vicinity. So what the board has done, and I think this is genius, is we actually we're building on the site in the square, the old airport area, but we also have property, and I'm going to make sure I get this right, out west that the board is also going to take ownership of because it's being donated. So that as we continue to grow, we know that our next school will be at that location. So we can start to look at the growth patterns, and what the growth patterns look like is there will be growth to the west eventually. It may not be for 10, 12, 15 years, but we'll have strategic locations where we can kind of divide our community boundaries into more logical attendance areas.
And I guess with that, like I live on the east side of town, so with that, it's seeing that, and I know things are moving that way, and I get that, but there's a lot of growth on the northeast side as well. And I feel, speaking from the other people, that side is kind of getting forgotten too. So I think a lot of them are trying to figure out, like, well, where am I going to go then?
Right, and that's why, as I stated earlier, that's why it's so important that we continue to engage the demographer to make sure, because they don't just do live births and assess who's going to be coming to our district. They also look at where are the residential homes going to be built in the future, and we monitor that, so we know, in 2029, we know that they're going to break ground on whatever that property is, so we can monitor that and stay ahead of the curve. So in my experience, good planning for the future is 6 to 10 years out. And what our board has done by securing a second site is they've set us up for success for the future, at least for the next school. At some point, we're going to have to make a decision. How many years down the road, I don't know at this point, but we're going to have to look at our middle level and our high school level. If our community continues to grow, like we hope it does with the economic development, then we're going to have to make those decisions and start to plan financially for when that day comes.
And we have come to the end of our time for this. We're not really prepared to record your questions. Unfortunately, we'll put them in there for the recording. But we welcome you to stay and talk with our admin. We have our assistant superintendents, our chief academic officer here. There is also a barbecue scheduled tonight for community builders, so if you want to make that. But we welcome you, if you could switch back, please, Casey, to our upcoming community meetings. And the next one is October 21st. The topic has not yet been decided, so if you have a burning topic or an idea that you think the community might really want to hear more about, please let us know. We're open to suggestions, and we really appreciate you attending tonight, and any of you watching this video. We appreciate you taking the time and the investment in our students. And Dr. Fadley, I'll let you have the final word.
Well, please join us. If you do want to stay around and ask questions, we're certainly glad to do that. But if you don't have any other evening plans, at Davidson Park, the community builders, I believe the Lions are cooking the burgers tonight. Burgers and hot dogs, I think. Somebody told me it might be ribeyes, but I'm not holding my breath. Burgers and hot dogs are great. Come out and celebrate the start of the school year, and we look forward to seeing you at our next forum and or in the community. I shop at both grocery stores, so I'm sure I'll see you at some point. Have a good evening.